In our first story, the Vice-Chancellor for Ghana's premier university, the University of Ghana, Professor Ebenezer Owusu, says the university is challenged in dealing with cases of sexual harassment that some victims who have made allegations in the past failed to provide evidence or had not shown up when asked to do so to prove the allegations. Professor Owusu, who has been chairing a meeting of vice-chancellors in Accra, said this week's documentary by the BBC has seriously battered the image of the country's premier university.
Professor Ebenezer Owusu looks calm and collected. His mood seems opposite to the current situation of the institution he leads, the University of Ghana.
It's so bad that we think our image has been battered.
He has just stepped out of a meeting of dons of universities in Ghana, which he's chairing, to talk to me about what he would do to check the issue of so-called sex for grades captured in this week's expose by British broadcaster, the BBC.
So we need to go back and redeem our image. It's had such a negative impact on us as a university, as a nation, and all the universities of Ghana. So only University of Ghana, the universities of Ghana. Yes, so it's not as if we are not doing anything. We are. And you know the chairs of the sexual and harassment committees, they've all been very, very tough women of integrity. And so I have no doubt that they're doing a good job, not for University of Ghana alone, but for the nation.
This is supposed to be one of the ordinary meetings that vice-chancellors in Ghana would usually have every quarter of the year. But this particular one, coming in a week when the foundations of the nation's premier university has been shaken to the core by this Sex for Grades documentary, could not be business as usual. Back at the University of Ghana, the school at the center of the scandal, students go about their day-to-day activities. Many would not speak to our cameras, but the few who muster the courage to say the university should do more to protect victims.
I think they can create some counseling committees that will help the girls who get sexually harassed, so they go there for help, so they'll be free from their trauma.
Because it is not only female that they harass sexually, men are equally involved, or men are equally harassed. So it is open to every member of the community. If you are being, or if you are engaged or somebody has done that to you, you can come and report and they will do further investigation into it. So for that issue, the university had a long time, and I know they have dealt with similar issues over and over and over.
Yes, some people claim they are threatened by those abusing them. So it's kind of, being blackmailed and threatened is a scary something. So I don't think anyone would like to speak up when you're scared.
These are difficult times for this school. 2 of its staff involved in the film have already been asked to go home. But for the thousands of students who continue to study here, it seems university administrators have more to do in restoring confidence and save its credibility that is now on the line. Justice Baidu, JoyNews, Accra.
Meanwhile, Professor Ebenezer Owusu, in the exclusive interview, also categorically denied allegations of sexual harassment as made against him by the CEO of Africa Integra's, Andrea Pezziconi. In a tweet, Andrea Pezziconi alleged that the Sex for Grace investigative piece that incorporated some lecturers to the University of Ghana resonated deeply with her. But Professor Owusu says the woman was only bitter. Well, he's been speaking with, again, Justice Baidu right here in Accra.
Need to treat it with the contempt that it deserves. You've seen me, and you can tell. Personally, I would describe the lady as somebody who is desperate, somebody who is bitter, and extremely angry. She's full of anger and frustrated because she had a project running. She intended to invest 64 million. And then the investor was going to pay out of that when completed, 25 million every year for the next 25 years. So 25 million every year for 25 years, up to 600 million. Yes. And now it gets to a point where she's unable to continue. Obviously, she will struggle, because by now she would be sitting back, counting her golden eggs. And those golden eggs are not coming anymore. So obviously she would do whatever. So I personally, I'm not too surprised at what she's doing, because truly it's something that I anticipated could happen, and it's happened.
Now, Prof, you describe this woman as someone who is bitter, but this is a decision that was taken by the university, and like you say, it's something that, according to you, you justifiably took. Why would he then be making this allegation at your person?
Yeah, because she thinks I'm the leader. Yes, she thinks I'm the leader. She had said several times that I'd never granted her the audience that I should have granted it. The fact of the matter is that I decided that I don't work as an individual. I work in a team. So you can't be meeting me as an individual. So whenever you come, be prepared to meet the team. And she protested. So she felt I didn't want to open up to her. Yes. So she expressed a bit of anger at my approach towards these things. But I'd make sure that anytime she came, she met with senior management. The only time that she booked an appointment that she wanted to meet with me in my office, deep down in my heart, something told me no. And that was the last time I had an interaction with her.
However, there's been a reaction. The CEO of Africa Integras, Andrea Pizziconi, has been backtracking on her earlier claims of sexual harassment against the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Ghana. Andrea Pizziconi had been explaining her current tweet where she said, "I never accused the Vice-Chancellor of harassment," in an interview with Israelite on JoyNews Prime.
Not shifting at all.
All right.
The point that I'm trying to make, and it's a very important point for some reason, and I think this is part of the education of the ecosystem of misogyny and the commodification of women. The line, the parallel, is the fact that these women are under incredible undergrad. We did a focus group. 90% of the girls said that they're being pressured by at least one professor for sex for grades. And the difficulty with that is that whether you succumb to that pressure or not, you then carry on in your career. And for the rest of your professional career, and I know the women of Ghana can relate to this, whenever you make any advancement, whenever you do anything of any recognition, then there is the immediate insinuation so often, oh, she must have slept with somebody to make that happen. She must have compromised herself or used her womanly prowess, as opposed to using her brain and her experience and her work ethic. And in the case with the Vice Chancellor, the parallel that I drew was that happened with such an incredibly high-stakes project as our infrastructure investment, which led to tens and tens of millions in losses for the university. His declarations, not just to me, but also in the council meeting, are a matter of fact, and they were. And even his insinuation over the last 24 hours that I recorded with him privately, I mean, it reminds me of the crazy talk of Mike Pence, honestly, who made that bizarre statement that he would never with a woman. I mean, as a professional woman, can you imagine how that sounds, that our only value or that every intention that we have is always to somehow seduce a man into getting what we want? That's just absurd. It's perfectly normal for two decision makers when there's an impasse to say, let's sit down and let's talk through these issues.
All right, so you've made the point, but I want to refer to the previous statement that you made, the first statement that you put out. And in there, I see this quote that you ascribe to the University of Ghana Vice-Chancellor, and you say, now, nothing could have been further from the truth. And in fact, all of my dealings at UGN in Ghana, it was the Vice-Chancellor who made me most uncomfortable when he repeatedly declined to work with me to save the project, but instead said that I was far too pretty to worry my little head about the project, while declaring, and this is the part that I find critical, quote, turn around everyone. I want to give her a proper hug. So I know well the pressure these women are. So I want to understand in what context you brought this line, turn around everyone. I want to give her a proper hug.
It's because he said it, and he said he made the first statement. So these are just statements of fact.
Okay, so if he said...
it's very important.
So
but
if he said that...
Very important. Very important. You can't let women, you can't take away our power to use and to call it what we want. I didn't accuse him of harassment, and did, especially because I don't want to distract from this deeper issue. That's so important. The enormous pressure that these, and also this insinuation that a woman is only as good as her pretty face or her body to advance her career. That is underlying so much of this abuse. And unfortunately, that's what I witnessed in my engagement with him by the remarks that he made. And frankly, there are like when kind of hug. I don't recall the detailed hug to remember. I know my discomfort, but I'm not trying to accuse him of so many other things that are high. For example, the attacks he made against me, just that I tracked by using my womanly power to coerce his predecessor.
All right, Andrea, now it turns out that you have said something about the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, and it turned out that some reports have come out suggesting that you said he has sexually harassed you. Now you're saying he didn't, or he never did. Would you...
I never said that. It was a headline who said that I said that, but I never spoke to ABC News, broke that story. My statement is what my statement on social media was.
Would you...
And I think that it skews the issue away into becoming a he said, she said, although there were many witnesses in the room, this notion of the abuse of power and the commodification of women and how we are valued, whether it be our brains or our bodies.
All right. Andrea, I want you to say specifically what you're accusing the Vice Chancellor of.
What would you say to the Vice Chancellor?
So the Vice Chancellor, you've said something about him. He's not too excited about it, or it turned out that it was reported that he said sexual harassment. Would you want to say exactly what he's done wrong to you?
I think a statement later this afternoon, which I to the Vice Chancellor. I addressed it to the professor. So I think that pretty much encompasses my situation.
Which is exactly what, if you could just articulate it.
Rather than, there was no harassment, there was a complete dismissal of my credibility. The attacks that he's made against, in terms of the convocation meetings, his releases, the slanderous statements to the media in the last 2 years, all of which, by the way, about trying to think of the bigger picture, which is how do we allow people to let off some steam and say, so that we can focus on getting those buildings built, which is what everybody should be worried about. All of that, what's the root of it? Where does it come from? Why is he attacking me and not W.P. Carey, the investor who ultimately took me? Because it wasn't me, actually. I was the one that was humbly showing up in Ghana every month, hoping to meet, to find common ground and to renegotiate what's required in order to put the project back. Why is he targeting me? What's the root of it? And then when you look at these other countries, is that there's just a sheer disbelief that, or so it seems, that who either looks like me or is my age or whatnot is capable of executing a project like that, when indeed I did.
All right, you have stated you put out in your statement that you don't have a problem with him and you want to continue the work that you started. Will you be considering apologizing for all the harm that you may have caused him with the remarks that came out?
Because my statements are matters of fact, and so I don't think any apology is required. I think that, if anything, the media is careful about the headlines that they use and treat stories with care, because, in fact, he...
Well, away from this, Ghana's most vocal anti-gay coalition is demanding that the country's political parties clearly articulate in their manifestos their stance on the legalization of homosexuality. The coalition has suggested an agenda by the global LGBTQ community to push for gay rights in Ghana and other African countries where those rights are not recognized. It maintains comprehensive sexuality education as a subject in schools is one of the many subtle ways being used by the LGBT community to advance their cause, though President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo only recently clarified Ghana would not permit the recognition of such rights as long as he remains the country's leader. The National Coalition for Proper Human Sexual Rights and Family Values is demanding that all political parties document their position on the matter. Legal practitioner Moses Fo Amwinin spoke with JoyNews Henry Kwesibedu.
We're only picking up from where the president left off. We're only doing, we're just at an activation of the president's general statement. So, you know, all Ghanaians don't like this. And it's not only this year. You remember when Cameron spoke, Professor Mills spoke against it. It was a lot of bubble and then it went down. So we think that we must come to a point where we have a strategy to respond to it holistically, what we call a comprehensive national and Pan-African response to the whole LGBT agenda. Because if we don't like it, then what's our position? And we all know our position. The Western Eurocentric viewpoint is that LGBTQI phenomena is a lifestyle. They like it, they love it, fine. But we in Africa and the Muslim Arab world, and even in Asia, Latin America, and even the majority of the people in Europe and America, because the LGBTQ movement, they are just 0.0% of the population in Europe and America. But because they have money and they've got influence, that's why they seem to be projecting an opinion as representing what the world believes in. We in Africa, we believe that it's a psychosocial problem with biological and medical sides to it, and you can have a five-fold solution to it: psychological, psychiatric, psychosocial counseling, medical methods, and the spiritual aspect. If you put all of that together, then you can have a solution. So all we are saying is that the best that the political parties can do, because they want us to hand over the sovereignty of the people. Don't forget that by the Constitution, sovereignty resides in the people of this country. Every 4 years, we delegate that power to you. So if we're going to do so, then you must reflect what we believe in, not you what you believe in or a few of your people believe in. All right? So tell us, what is your policy position on the LGBT agenda? Because whether we like it or not, the LGBT movement is one of the most, in fact, if not the most organized and the most resourced movement, social movement the world has ever known. And if we don't respond to it holistically and in a structured manner, then we're going to suffer. So the politicians should do Ghanaians a favor, because in the elections, we're going to ask questions. Where is your manifesto? In it, is there a response? And we're saying as a coalition.
A member of the coalition, Dr. Samuel Muna, who outlined the role of the United Nations and its agencies in the promotion of the LGBTQ agenda, also said he served notice they will have no option than to march to petition the UN to make known their stance or position against the movement.
By the way, the coalition here in Ghana is not the first of its kind to rise up. In Canada, families and parents have sent out all kinds of notes to the government, petitions to abort the CLC. In Brazil, it has been aborted. In Uganda, it has been aborted. In the UK and the USA, parents are bringing petitions to the government to abort it. I think it won't be long before we join with Asia and the Arab world to send petitions to the UN to arrest this thing from the hands of UNFPA and UNESCO. You go to international conferences and they are spreading condoms all over the place. That is not life. Life is more than sex. And God used the front door for sex and the back door for rejection of feces. How can the back door become a channel for sex? How? What is the sense in this?
Former President John Dramani Mahama is accusing government of plotting to wreak havoc and also create confusion during the 2020 polls. Mr. Mahama, in making the claim, cited a letter in which the Upper West Regional Security Council requested an MPP regional chairman to submit names of persons to be trained for next year's elections. The flag bearer of the NDC says the party subsequently seemed to have followed up on the letter and discovered that indeed government is training thugs at Isuchari for the election, a situation he described as worrying. He fears their actions could destabilize the peace of the country. Mr. Mahama made these allegations when the president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Roland Afomoni, led a delegation to pay a courtesy call on him.
We remember what happened in Owusu, West Wuogon. I pray that God forbids that nothing like that ever happens again. But you know, the issue of vigilantes, you know, that especially one party is training. I remember at the time of Owusu, West Wuogon, there was a letter that came out, you know, asking some party executives to bring able-bodied people to be trained, you know, as security for that party during elections. Since then, we have evidence that those people are being sent to Asuchari and trained in batches over and over again.
The former president also accused the National Communication Authority of shutting down pro-opposition media houses. Well, that'll be it for the latest news headlines. We have to look at stories dominating the front pages soon. Stay with us.